Good morning, welcome to this accountability and performance meeting. I'm Jonathan Sherwood, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hertfordshire. I'm joined this morning by Deputy Chief Constable Andy Mariner, who's stepping in for the Chief for this APM. This accountability and performance meeting is designed to help me fulfil my statutory duty to hold the Constabulary to account on behalf of the public. The webcast is in watch-only mode. There's no ability for the public to ask questions, but we hope you find it an interesting session. And they're broadcast for transparency so the public can see the kinds of things I'm raising and the answers that come from the Constabulary. This morning we're going to be covering 5 topics: burglary, live facial recognition, leadership and wellbeing, firearms licensing, and the use of artificial intelligence in policing. And we're going to cover them in that order. And so, welcome, Deputy Chief Constable. Your first APM. Thank you for joining. We'll start with burglary, and perhaps you could just begin by outlining the current picture with residential burglary in Hertfordshire.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, and thanks for the welcome to my very first one of these meetings. So in terms of offences, over the last 12 months rolling compared to the previous rolling 12 months, there's been a slight increase, around about 1%. So we've just had 1,500 in the last 12 months compared to the previous 12 months. No particular kind of trends or pictures or patterns with that. But that doesn't stop us from. We've really refined our tasking coordination process over the last couple of months, and we're in a really strong position to be able to allocate resources to where they need to be. One of the other bits that we're really laser focused on is the fact that we as a constabulary have not historically been brilliant at solving burglaries, particularly home burglaries. But I would say we have never, up until very recently, we have never solved more than 9 burglaries of the home in any given month. But to give you the reassurance, already in March, we have solved 9 home burglaries, which is actually a 10% solve rate. And actually, if we were to continue that, we would go from where we are compared to the rest of the country to about mid-pack in the country, so it's quite a seismic change. The way that we've done that, not only have we kind of focused the minds of everyone around this really important crime type. Every crime type is really important. This is one that I think particularly impacts people. We're getting there more quickly. We're dispatching people kind of directly to the scenes. We're chasing through forensic hits in a really forensic way, excuse the pun, but really getting into that level of detail. We've also created in the last month what we're calling a surge capacity for burglary, which will be in a position to move it into different places. But it's had quite a dramatic effect in terms of chasing down offenders, outstanding offenders. Yesterday we ran an operation where we actually arrested 5 people specifically for burglary. And I would expect this trajectory to continue.
Thank you. That's really reassuring to hear, because as you say, it's an area that burglary's been fairly low in Hertfordshire, but so's the detection rates historically, and so that's something that we all want to see improving in terms of that detection rate, and so welcome the action that you're taking there. What would you say the sustainability of that is in terms of that additional focus and capacity you've put in? Is that something that you're thinking about how that's maintained and kind of part of the business as usual work of those teams over time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess if I think of it from a perspective of what we see as one of our laser-like focuses, solving crime, we're actually solving more crime than we've ever solved. So at the same time as this surge capacity specifically looking at burglary, we're actually more broadly solving more crime than we've ever solved. In fact, when I'm paid to kind of look at the detail of this, and when you look at the rolling 12 months, because of the significant solve rate being over 20% often week on week, we're pulling up the rest of the year, the rolling 12 months. We will keep a really close eye on it. I'm personally running what we call a gold group, which is kind of a way of gripping hold of all the different elements and noting the impact on the wider performance. And if we need to tweak it, then we'll tweak it. But at the moment, it looks sustainable. And I think there's just something for us, because the long-term bit and kind of thinking more broadly about the question, we need to think about how we can educate all officers to get better at solving burglaries, not just have a particular surge capacity. We need to think about, kind of the force-wide psyche, and that's part of the plan.
Thank you. And I know you've kept a real focus around attendance at burglaries as well, and making sure that's high. Unless the public don't want that visit, but making sure that offer is there in terms of that immediate response, which is an important part of it.
And we dig into that regularly as well to understand where we've not attended. Ruth Dodsworth runs our control room as the chief superintendent, and we literally speak all the time about where those gaps are. And it, by and large, it's because the member of the public has requested that we don't attend, which is exactly as you said.
Thank you. There's obviously quite a seasonal aspect to burglary in terms of both the kind of shift between pure sort of home burglary versus the kind of outbuildings, sheds, garages, those sorts of things, but also sort of through the year some seasonal focus. And one of the things that the Chief and I talked about the last time we had this on the agenda was some focus around Diwali in the winter in areas of the county that have larger Hindu communities that historically have been targeted in some areas around burglary. What impacted the work that the constabulary was doing around that seasonal focus in areas at times of the year like Diwali have?
Yes, I went to a Diwali event fairly recently in Watford, and you see all of the gold, and you think, from a policing perspective, the work that we've done with partners, etc., has clearly had an impact because we're not seeing the spikes that we've seen historically. So since 2022, there have been 2 spikes: January 22, November in January. So sorry, since 2022 there have been 2 spikes, January 22 and November 24. The only thing that having dug into it after you requested it, the only thing we can see is that maybe the November spike in 24 was potentially related to Diwali itself, which saw 16 offences in the November. But then since then, the highest level that we've had on any month has been 5, with only 3 so far in 26 linked to Asian gold. With one in Broxbourne, one in North Herts, and the other in St Albans. So there's what we were seeing before just isn't playing out now. Yeah. But I would just ask, from my perspective, that people continue that absolutely should celebrate these events. Absolutely should do what they want to do, and it's brilliant to see it. Just be kind of thoughtful about where the jewellery is stored. And we will do our bit in terms of, patrolling and supporting events, etc.
No, thank you. And there was some really good work done, particularly in the southwest of the county around that spike back in 2024, and a lot of reassurance given to the community around that. Some really good work reducing those offences subsequently. And then looking ahead to the summer months and some of those unconnected buildings, when people are out in their gardens a bit more, have got the kind of sheds and garages, which we see as a bit of an issue sometimes. What advice would you give members of the public around that to help avoid them becoming victims in the first place?
So we want people to live their lives freely, and you've made the point already. Hertfordshire is a safe county, but there is still work for the police to do. I would encourage people, if they're in the back gardens, to keep their front windows shut, because more often than not, it's opportunists. It goes for the same for cars, locked cars. Really simple kind of things that you can make your house less attractive if you wanted to invest in something, if you could afford like a Ring doorbell or something like that. That's also something that's really helpful, and obviously could help with a kind of neighbourhood network. And as I say, a lot of it's around opportunists, I would say. So locking the front windows, moving things to a different part of the house, and just being aware of your surroundings.
Thank you, and keep up the work on getting those solve rates up, because that's really good progress. So thank you. I'm going to move then to live facial recognition technology, where there was recently a second deployment of the technology by the constabulary in Watford that followed the first one in Cheshunt just before Christmas. It's a use of technology I'm really supportive of, and there's significant public support for in the surveys that my office have done. What were the outcomes, though, of that second use of the technology in Watford?
So they were really good. We had 5 arrests for various different things, from someone that had been cultivating cannabis and was wanted, shoplifting, offensive weapon. And what was really, really good to see, because we did deployment just before Christmas, as you know. And what was really good to see yet again was the public support for it. And not just the public support, which is obviously really, really important part of the process, but also the officers are really enjoying using the equipment as well. So our intention is to continue to do at least one, if not two, deployments every month going forward, using the equipment that we've currently been using.
That's great, and I think I'm right in saying that one of those arrests was someone who was who'd been wanted since I think 2023 or something like that, and
That's right.
was identified simply because that technology was being used in the town centre that day.
Yeah, you've definitely got your ear to the ground. Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's the thing, because the officers are. We have a system called ID sort, and officers are always looking for people that are wanted. But the technology is just that extra layer. So, the chances of an officer spotting someone that they knew had been wanted for the last 3 years is highly unlikely. And this is just another opportunity to kind of use technology to do our job just that little bit better.
Yeah. Thank you. And you talked about wanting to continue using the technology and continuing those regular deployments. What would the public expect to see then in terms of the use of that technology when they're in a town centre, perhaps over the summer months?
Yeah, so we definitely will be using it over the summer months to give you that reassurance. The vans deploy in pairs, often slightly different locations, and then you'll see the public will, in terms of what they'll actually see, will be a couple of people in each van and then officers scattered all around it. I also kind of, just to let people know, they're also plainclothes officers as well, so it's not just the officers that you can see in uniform, but also the ones that are in plainclothes, which is another really important part of it. In terms of locations, we will always update our website 7 days before the deployment, which is in line with expectations, and we will be putting the live face recognition vans in locations that you would expect us to, and obviously we'll let you know each time, we'll let the public know each time 7 days in advance, but they can expect high footfall areas, areas that, so kind of more urban areas, and probably the areas, as I said, Hertfordshire's a safe county, but the more higher crime areas where we're most importantly expected to find people that are wanted, and that's the bit. We have you can dial up or dial down the sensitivity on it, which is why we've had absolutely no negative kind of false reads so far. And that's one of the concerns of the public. We've had absolutely none, but we are adding additional crime types to it. Yeah. So we're casting slightly wider in terms, but it will always be people that are of risk to the public or wanted. Thank you.
And I wanted to just touch on those safeguards, because when I've talked with the Chief at these meetings previously around the use of LFR, we've touched quite a bit around some of the safeguards that are in place. The fact that if you're not on the watch list, your data's deleted immediately. You've talked about the sensitivity level that's set to ensure that there isn't any statistically significant risk of bias. Are you happy with how those safeguards have worked in practice? There haven't been false activations, for example. Yeah. Are you seeing in the deployment what you would expect it to have been seeing in theory? Yeah,
so I've actually seen the technology and been quite heavily involved somewhere else as well, and it is exactly the same as I've seen before. It's worked exactly as I would have hoped it's worked. We haven't, as you said, had any kind of misfires, if you like, which is really important to us. But what's also really important is the public engagement with it. So ahead of the first one, as you know, because you led it, we had the initial public engagement and kind of picked up some concerns there. We actually had independent kind of advisory group members that attended to have a look at it to reassure themselves that's how transparent this all is. Every single time we do a deployment, there is a debrief, and we look at all of that. We know how many faces that were scanned, and et cetera, et cetera. And I know you did a very detailed webinar, I think, was it yesterday with Superintendent Jamie Fowler, very recently?
Yeah, last week, yeah.
To kind of dig into it even more. So, and we welcome, obviously from you, but we welcome from the wider public their thoughts. But currently, all we're seeing is positivity, and that's from public and officers. But it's a really serious piece of equipment, and we'll continue to take it seriously.
Thank you. And the Constabulary has approached it with great transparency, which I think has been really welcome. And obviously, there's always a bit of a shift between where something's new and kind of there's that work being done to kind of build confidence originally, and then as it becomes business as usual. How will you keep an eye operationally? Obviously, my team and I will as well from an accountability point of view, but how will you operationally keep track of how you're maintaining public confidence in this area with this technology?
So I think just because we've done it a few times shouldn't mean that we stop talking to the public about how they feel about it. It's a really good kind of yardstick for us. The local confidence surveys that will be done every 6 months is another really good way of kind of understanding the impact of it. What we also get is lots of information on the ground from officers in terms of how it's been perceived. And obviously through our race inclusion board and other scrutiny boards that we have. It'd just be a watching brief, but my hope would be that over time we do more of these operations. The whole time we're arresting people and offenders that are wanted, and people are getting charged for offences they've committed, against victims. That's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, and really welcome the fact that Hertfordshire is one of the forces pushing ahead with this technology, because it is something that does make a difference to keeping the public safe.
Yeah.
Let's go on then to leadership and well-being. And I wanted to just start by acknowledging how important this area is in terms of the organisation's effectiveness and the support for all the people who work within it, but also really significant amount of work that you and the chief officers have done over the last year or so on this. There were a number of recommendations made in 2024 by the Inspectorate around leadership and management, such as around well-being, around how strategic decisions were communicated, how the workforce were being engaged with.
Yeah.
Could you just talk me through the progress that's been made in addressing all of those recommendations?
So just in terms of the governance very quickly, this is something that the Chief Constable has asked me to take personal responsibility for. So I have what feels like daily conversations about it, but it's actually structurally bi-weekly, monthly conversations, getting right into the detail of these recommendations, because it's not just ticking a box for an inspectorate. This is about providing the best service to our colleagues and the public. So in terms of progress, into a couple of key headings. So one of the things that were mentioned is around the lack of use of data and analytics. We've completely changed how we do that, and possibly of interest to people will be the fact the workforce have come with us on that journey. We now have daily dashboards, so officers can log in and see where the crimes were yesterday. Supervisors can see how many crimes were solved yesterday. Importantly, where officers are lagging behind in terms of solving crimes, because that's kind of one of our big drives. So that's been a really big shift for us. It's hard to kind of describe the journey that has been in terms of the creation of those dashboards, etc., to do it justice. But we are really, really in a strong place with that now. And in kind of the other bit, it's not just having the data and the analysis, it's actually then using it operationally. We've refined. We now have a local tasking process across each of the districts, so the district chief inspectors, superintendents, etc., the senior leaders can actually allocate the resources based on that analysis. And then we have a force-wide version of that that's chaired at executive level, or potentially one below, that then talks about on a force-wide level where things cross borders exactly how we can use that data and analytics to then task our resources across those areas. So quite a shift. We've got. In terms of, you mentioned about listening to the workforce and communicating strategic decisions, that was a specific AFI that we had. We've got to such a place where I have satisfied myself that we have now, and I'll talk about the detail of what we've done, but actually got to a point where that's no longer an issue for us. And I've had the team draw up a set of, in effect, what we've done for HMIC, and HMIC have acknowledged that and closed the AFI. So it's not just the own kind of high standards that I've set on that process, but also HMIC have also said, well done, we've shut that one down. But that's the chief did an initial roadshow, and he's got another one planned for this year to continue the theme, because it's not about ticking a box, it's about doing the right thing. A really clear 10-point plan and to direct the workforce. Lots of ongoing engagement, weekly blogs, local commanders do, kind of blogs, but it's not just about talking to people, it's communicating why decisions are being made. We heard from the workforce that the structure doesn't quite work right. So from September last year, we've completely changed at senior level how we're structured, communicated that in a lot of detail to the workforce. People understand why, and not just that. Since that point, performance has even exponentially improved as well around solve rates, etc. So we think we're kind of in the right area, and the staff are coming with us on it. So and it's just ongoing. We were talking about it yesterday at our exec board, because continue the messaging, refining what the roadshow will be to continue to understand, make sure people understand. But it's what we're really keen on is that when HMIC come back later this year, they also see the improvements, because actually the staff that are working really hard and the public need to also see that that's been given a good bill of health.
Thank you very much for that update, and positive to hear that's been closed off by the inspectorate. So it's really rapid progress being made there. There's been some work being done to look at how the constabulary develops and supports frontline leaders.
Yeah.
What does that work look like, and what impact have you been seeing from it?
So you're absolutely right, and I've got the number. So we've got a first line and kind of midline leaders course. So it's kind of sergeants and inspector level. At the moment, there were 100% sergeants booked onto their course, and we're then going through, kind of getting them on the course. We've had 33% have attended. That's something we'll continue to watch, and 52 inspectors have either are booked and attended, which is 50%. So we'll continue to drive that, because there's no point having a course and then they're not on it. But that's still a significant number of people that have actually been through the course. But there wasn't a course, so the course has actually been created in the first place, and now we're freeing up these really important role holders to go in and do these courses, and they are getting really good reviews. Not just the input I do. Obviously, there are other people that are involved in it, but they are getting really good reviews. One of the things that I think, in terms of the impact from it, one of the tangible outcomes is reduction in sickness, increase in how we're kind of proactively dealing with sickness, increased solve rates. They're kind of these kind of metrics that we could attribute to that. We're about to launch in the next month or two the next kind of culture compass survey. The last one was done very late 2024, so it'll be a really interesting kind of check and balance. So we can check through that as well. We've also been doing, we did our own kind of mini peel inspection within the constabulary and it's still ongoing, but over the last couple of weeks, and the pulse surveys that have happened in amongst that are also showing positivity and people kind of coming along with us. From a leadership perspective, we do have around about 65 vacancies at sergeant level. They're all currently obviously being filled by temporary sergeants. And we have a smaller number of inspector vacancies, but the same thing. So we're currently running an inspector process and then quickly the sergeant process. And that's eventually the answer to the question, which is about they will all go through the frontline, midline leadership course. And I think we'll see another bump in performance and kind of culture improvement across the constabulary for sure. In the meantime, we're getting a load of other people through it, but I think that'll be, and it's literally the process for inspectors, which is first, is ongoing right now, so we should start to see that quite quickly. We're talking about the attendance and content of that course literally kind of in the background as we speak. But we didn't have it before, and I think this is another kind of iteration, and these people are these people. Sergeants, inspectors, police staff equivalents are, kind of the ones that drive much of the work. So I can see why they put the focus on it.
Thank you, and they're, as you say, really critical people in terms of that frontline operational delivery and leadership of teams. So investing in them, supporting them is critical.
Yeah.
I wanted to then just touch on wellbeing support for the workforce, which again was kind of part of that kind of wider set of recommendations that you referred to being resolved and closed with the inspectorate, but also just reflecting on the National Police Wellbeing Survey that last year had some not inconsistent nationally kind of year-on-year figures around really high numbers of officers saying that they feel burnt out, they feel physically fatigued regularly. That those are not sort of Hertfordshire specific issues, they're national issues for policing. But what has the constabulary done to try and increase and develop the wellbeing support that it has in place for its workforce?
So to reassure you, I meet with, and I know the Chief does as well, I meet with the Federation, Unison, and also the Police Superintendents Association regularly, like monthly. And we're not immune to the national issues, as you've said. And we do have really high-performing teams, but they do need the level of support, absolutely. And they are telling us the same thing. So one of the things that came out very recently, about a month ago, when I met the exec of the Police Superintendents Association, is about the psychological assessments that we give. These psychological assessments to public protection roles, those kind of things, and that's absolutely right. But the National Police Superintendents Association, it kind of links to the National Wellbeing Survey, have recognised that the trauma that these senior operational leaders could also face is not dissimilar, in terms of the mental impact. So the Chief and I were really keen to work with our wellbeing services through the Director of HR to divert some of that to that level as well, and that's happened. So it was really good to go to a meeting with them just 2 weeks ago, all of that level, and say this is how much we care, this is how much we want to support you, and the same is exactly the case for Federation and Unison. I will say that there was more probably available when we were inspected previously than people knew. And I think there's kind of a bit of tension there because when people are interviewed, which is absolutely right, HMIC will dig into face-to-face interviews. Many people weren't aware of what was available. So one of the things that we've had to do, because it's really good feedback, and I'm not being defensive in any way, it was really good feedback, is making sure people actually do understand what is available. And probably the next stage from that as well that we now monitor is once they found out it's available and they asked to do something, that the supervisors actually let them go. Because that's the other bit, and that leads to your question about frontline leaders, etc., saying we have to prevent crime, we have to be on the front foot with criminals, but we also have to look after our staff, and to get that balance right. We have the wellbeing team, from our chaplaincy to our wellbeing support teams. Literally, if you bump into them as you walk around, like they're in our system everywhere. But we also have a whole range of different things, and it's actually quite interesting when you draw this stuff together and you think actually we're quite an incredible organisation when it comes to the support. So nutrition and lifestyle programmes, nature-based wellbeing programme, trauma awareness, impact management, peer-to-peer support, and we've got champions throughout the workforce now: menopause, neurodiversity, wellbeing. As I've already mentioned, the dedicated internal wellbeing team. I've got it listed because I couldn't possibly remember it all. But one of the challenges still for us is to make sure that we can kind of lay it all out, but we need to make sure that they actually use it, and that is monitored through a monthly performance meeting that I have, that actually tracks the appointments, missed appointments, and the reason why, and then we track all the way back through to make sure that it's not supervisors, and then where it is we deal with it. So again, I think it's another one of those where it was probably a bit of a shame how it came across, if you like, but actually we've got hold of that, we've added to it, and now hopefully people will start to feel supported, and we through our pulse surveys, etc., we'll continue to monitor that as well. And if there are any hot spots of where people are particularly suffering or reporting trauma and they're not able to access that service, we will also pick up that as well.
Thank you. And that governance and management that you've described is really important, isn't it, in terms of understanding whether it's not just something that exists, but actually people are able to access it, whether they're being given the time to do so as well. So that's useful to have the update on. Thank you. I wanted to, as part of that, just ask around assaults on police officers, something that's completely unacceptable for officers to be assaulted in the course of their duty. How many assaults on police officers were there recorded last year? And perhaps can you just get into a bit more detail around how officers are supported when they're assaulted in the line of duty?
Of course. So 778 officers were assaulted in 2025, which is 778 too many, obviously, but that is down from 897 the previous year. And what I can't answer is what we can attribute that to. You know, we've kind of looked at where these assaults happen, why they happen, review body worn video, etc. Unfortunately, it can happen, and I think that's what your follow-up question is a really good one, because actually then it's so what happens after they have been assaulted. So what we are also seeing is 72% of that 778, 72% of those were actually solved. That's not always been the case. You know, and a good other question is what happened to the other 28%. What we find actually is officers, being the humans that they are, the compassionate humans that they are, and when I say officers, we've not been able to differentiate between police officers and staff in the data. So this also includes a small number of PCSOs. There were seven that year as well. But so it's what we find with the officers is the concern around. They've been assaulted, but the person that did it may be vulnerable or suffering from mental ill health, and they've made the decision themselves as the victim, and that's how they're treated, that it wouldn't be in the best interests of the individual to pursue a criminal case. So where we see the attrition, because it's obviously witnessed by a police officer or PCSO, very often on body-worn cameras, so ultimately totally provable. The compassion kicks in, and the right thing to do in those circumstances is actually to say we want to not prosecute that individual and get them the mental health support, etc., of what they need. So that's hence it's not 100%, and you can argue it both ways. But I like that. You know, I like the fact that they're thinking about the longer term solution for this problem that's experiencing mental health crisis or whatever, rather than everyone just has to be sent through the court system. We have, in terms of support, we have Operation Hampshire, which no doubt has been talked about in this meeting before. Just draw out some of the highlights. Every single offence, as I've just described, against police officer or police staff is investigated. It's not any longer. We've had it before where it's been investigated by the officer themselves. That never happens now. And we give the same level of commitment to an officer or police staff member who's been assaulted as we do to a member of the public. So that means the victim code is complied with. They get the same updates that a member of the public should expect. We also know that where officers are supported after this, they recover better, because we have some really seriously assaulted officers. You know, there was a court result just yesterday. An officer was really badly assaulted, but and they're supported all the way through with welfare support, occupational health support, and every officer assaulted is met with a supervisor, you know, a kind of one-to-one to talk about them as a victim, see what we can do to help. They get the support of, depending on whether it's unlikely, not impossible, that someone from the Superintendents Association be assaulted, but they would get the support from the association, but the Federation Unison wrap around them as well. And in some cases it will be a trigger for a detective to be allocated to investigate it as well. And also the TRIM process, the trauma risk management process, is also used when it's appropriate, wellbeing support, etc. So there is a lot done. It's good to see, from my perspective, that there's been a reduction in the offences against our emergency workers. It's also in terms of governance, just to reassure you, we look at it at a very high level at a monthly governance board that I have, but we also have a really good Chief Superintendent, John Simpson, who owns it as a particular piece of work. He has a monthly board that goes into a tremendous amount of detail, just to kind of look at trends, patterns, themes, and make sure that we've done exactly what I've just outlined there. So hopefully that's reassurance that we're in a pretty good place.
Thank you, and it's certainly positive to hear those numbers coming down, but still, you know, couple of officers being assaulted every single day on duty is really significant, isn't it? And just completely unacceptable. But positive to hear the support and action and attention that you've got in place.
We do just quickly, we pick up sometimes on where you have officers who have been repeatedly assaulted on different occasions.
Yeah.
And in that occasion, there's a management intervention. So they'll look at the body-worn camera. Sometimes the footage will be sent to a personal safety instructor to say, could that have been avoided? We're not victim blaming, but what we want to do is prevent it from happening again. And that's another kind of service, if you like. Officers can go for further training, and just to make sure that we're not putting them in harm's way.
Yeah. Okay, useful. I'm going to move on to firearms licensing then, which is a regular agenda item for these meetings.
Yeah.
Been a couple of months since we last had an update at the APM, and I know lots of work being done on this. Could you give me an update on the current number of outstanding renewals and new applications, and particularly how many are outside the 120-day national standard?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the current number of outstanding renewals, we have 2,790. And then in terms of those outside the 120-day national standard, we have 1,512 as of the 8th of March. That's the almost up-to-date data. One of the things to talk about here is we had, up until very recently, we had a number of applications that were up to 5 years old, renewals, beg your pardon, renewals that are up to 5 years old. And that's just not right. And we may come on to it, but we've invested quite heavily quite recently for various different reasons, which also may come on to. But and what we've seen now is, as of this morning, we have no renewals, and it's not something we're proud of. This is something that we needed to focus on, but we have no outstanding renewals from 2020, or 2021. We actually have. There's one on the table from 2022, but it actually turns out it's a joint bit of data. It's not from Hertfordshire. It's actually a grant, and it's from one of the other two counties. So now we're focusing on a real effort on doing the oldest first. Our reasoning being, we have people that have firearms, and they have old renewals, probably on temporary permits, etc. So there's a real focus on that, and it will slow down slightly the kind of new applications, the way that's processed. But our focus is on this. We've got currently 82 licences from 2020 renewals of 2023, and then 354 from 2024. And I've had. I now have, and I described gold groups earlier. I don't spend my whole time in gold groups, but this stuff does need focus. So I now have a weekly gold group. I chair it, and to give you kind of reassurance in terms of the level, we have the Deputy Chief Constable of Cambridgeshire and Assistant Chief Constable of Bedfordshire, because it's obviously a Triforce unit, all present there with some really, really key people. And we're looking at this weekly as part of that meeting. Through that, I know that I've been reassured, and we'll track it every week, that in the next 10 days we will have dealt with the 82 from 2023, and then over the following probably 4 to 5 weeks we will have dealt with those from 2024. And I say this not to celebrate, but in terms of showing you the progress, by around about 5 weeks' time, we will be focusing on 2025 renewals, of which there are 3,413. And that is, it will just be really good that we don't have any that go back 5 years, because that's just not where we want to be. And we have increased the size of the team recently by an additional 10 officers. And you asked me earlier about if we're focusing on burglary. How can I reassure you that we're able to do everything else? And this is another thing that is one of the functions that we must perform for the gun community, and so we took a really kind of difficult decision, but it was the right decision to move 10 resources into that area, to that joint unit. Hence some of that progress that we've made. So it's an ongoing piece of work.
No, thank you for that update. And so I think that's useful reassurance for the public around some of those more historic renewals, because that does, as you'd expect, pop up in the inbox relatively regularly from people who've been impacted. But certainly over the coming weeks, all of those sort of 2024 earlier will all be worked through, and then on to the 2025 one. So that's certainly a useful kind of milestone, isn't it, in terms of some of those historic backlogs being cleared through. That's useful.
Yeah, and there's we accept it's not good enough. HMIC came and had a look as a thematic inspection, told it wasn't good enough, and they're right. But this has got to give you that reassurance. And I know this is one way that you scrutinise us. There are many other meetings where you ask me questions about this as well, and just continue to reassure you that this is something that we are really focused on. The numbers are showing that it's going in the right direction.
Thank you. And you referred then to the cause for concern that was published by the Inspectorate a few months ago. Obviously, there's been quite a detailed action plan developed that the PCCs have been looking at across the three forces that's been submitted to the Inspectorate. Can you give me an update on the progress that you've made against that action plan? I appreciate over a relatively short period of time since it was submitted.
And I guess this is when the machine kicks in. So the headline is the action plan from our perspective, from the police perspective, as opposed to the Inspectorate perspective, and I can come on to that. It's done. As such as the attention that's been given to it. So should I go through the different headlines?
Yeah,
Is that helpful? So one of them, to make sure that all licensing certificates are signed off with proper delegated authorities, is kind of the authority levels at which people can sign them off. That's the first one. That's done. New policy written, which covers it all, signed by each of the three chief supers, and we've now got a QA process that we're now putting into place to make sure that that's adhered to continually. When it updates firearms licensing policies, talking about our Triforce unit, updates firearms licensing policy and standard operating procedures, including delegated authorities in line with the statutory guidance that came out last August, and make sure it's consistently applied. We've done that as well. I regularly meet with, as I said, Chris from CAMS and Jackie from BEDS. We managed to line all of that up with the help of our licensing team. So all the policies line up. There are 22 policies, and I've read every single one of them, and so has Chris and so has Jackie. And it may not have needed that level of kind of forensic examination, but we're like, do you know what? We're going to give it that level of attention. So there's actually, that level you probably don't even need to know, but there's a grid that actually shows who's looked at it and what they thought. And we've gone methodically through the whole lot. And we've all ticked all of them. For the report team have had many comments to deal with, but it's where we need it to be. So that's for every single one of our 22 policies. So that one's done. Understand the risks that the backlog poses and appropriately prioritise licence applications and renewals. I kind of touched on that. We now have a good case management system, which we call Felix, and through that we're able to produce the data that I've just gone through with you. We're also prioritising, as I've said before, the oldest renewals first, and kind of working through that. So we understand the backlog. We are into the detail of that regularly at all the different levels. And we're working through it in the way that we see the riskiest ones, if you like, first, riskiest for public safety first. So that one is also discharged. Review and assure itself that the desk-based shotgun licence renewal process effectively reduces risk to the public. We've now updated and refreshed our policy, and it's been agreed by the Chief Constables. Put in place a governance structure with oversight from senior leaders to make sure the Firearms Explosive Licensing Department functions effectively. So I've talked about one of the goal groups that I chair. We call it Cordite. The Cordite has a silver group that runs underneath it. So we now have a bi-week. It was weekly. we're going to move it to bi-weekly because now we've dispatched the action plan, if you like. Now it's actually about allowing the team to do their work and coming in every 2 weeks at really high level to kind of get into the detail. So it will switch soon to bi-weekly, but that there is still a weekly silver group at tactical level. So in terms of a governance structure with oversight from senior leaders, I think we've kind of we've really nailed that in terms of deputy chief level, gold group, chief superintendent level silver group, which is weekly and will continue to do, and that has kind of seen us dispatch this action plan with speed, but also with quality as well. But we're not going to stop doing it. I think one of our reflections is we just need to keep the eyes on it, because I think to keep the momentum, there's still lots of work to do on it. Next one is improve how we communicate with officers and staff and the public. So there's loads of stuff in this area. One of the things that we've done since the 2nd of March, we have a phone line which is open. We haven't had that before. And it's not something that every force area offers. It does take the team away from processing licence applications, but equally it can relieve some frustration from people that are waiting for updates. So it's going to be open between 10 and 12, Monday to Friday, and that's been since the 2nd of March. We're just working in the background on some kind of... So phone line is great, and people still do use phones, but we're looking at some other tech options in the background, single online home, some online kind of interactive options. And my team are telling me excitedly that's coming, but I don't want to say it to you today. I want to kind of develop it and make sure we can land it before, so I can not over-promise and under-deliver. But there's lots of thought about how we can do that even better in the background. We had a whole load of just over 2,000 emails that were in the inbox. They've all been dealt with. We have a frequently asked questions website that is now being really honest. I'm not saying we were being dishonest before, but I think that there was probably a thought about not wanting to overshare the position that we're in. Now we've taken a completely different, the 3 DEPs and the 3 chiefs the same, and the 3 PCCs, we need to be really transparent with this, and so our FAQs websites reflect that. And we're now really grateful. I can't name him, I'm afraid, because I don't have his name to the front of my mind, but we have a new independent advisory group chair that's kind of helping us through some of that communication with the public as well, and how we can do that going forward. I'm almost there. 2 more. So provide enough sustainable resources to safely manage the workload in the firearms explosive licensing unit. So we probably didn't have the right level of resource in there. And it is, as I've mentioned before, it is about making sure that we kind of spread where we need to be, and they're difficult decisions that we wrestle with all the time. But from a Hertfordshire perspective alone, we've just put an additional 10 officers in there. Cams and beds, just to reassure you, and I know you know this, but to say it out loud, cams and beds have also put their proportion in as well. But just to speak about Hertfordshire, there are 10 that have gone in there. One of the things HMIC picked up on is we had some officers in there that hadn't attended the right course. We actually had the College of Policing came and actually delivered the course for us, so they're now trained. And the final one, make sure officers and staff have the right skills, training experience to do their jobs effectively. It kind of links to my previous point. So we have all of our unit all trained. We now have a trained trainer as well for the legacy bit going forward. So hopefully, there was a lot to go through, but it's to reassure you that line by line that plan is dealt with, and it's been dealt with really quickly. We're now just waiting for a couple of months for it to bed in, and then HMIC will come back and have a check to reassure themselves.
Thank you very much for that update. I think the details useful and hopefully gives reassurance to members of the public watching both the seriousness with which the issue's being taken, but also the progress that's being made. And I know you've put a lot of oversight into it, so thank you for that. And we look forward to seeing the return visit from the inspectorate in due course, and no doubt continue progress around getting that historic backlog down. Thank you. I'm going to move on to our final agenda item now, which is the use of artificial intelligence in policing, something that is in the news periodically and indeed quite a bit of support in the police reform white paper for further uses of AI. Obviously needs to be done carefully and ethically. Perhaps to start off with, can you just outline how the Constabulary is currently making use of artificial intelligence to support its work?
As of December last year, we have a piece of technology or company in Hertfordshire called Palantir, the system called Nectar, and there are other options out there. This is just the one that we've gone for. What it does is it can harvest from multiple different data sources and put it all into one single place. So something that we may have even missed, but certainly something that may have taken a lot longer is now really quickly and right there at the touch of a button. The way that it's kind of manifesting itself, and we did a bit of a test of it in the run-up to committing, because you did rightly expect us to do that. As we have it in our safeguarding area. So one of the things, and it tracks back to HMIC, one of the things HMIC had an issue that they raised with us, and it led to an AFI, was around our lack of Clare's Law disclosures. So this is right to ask and right to know. And we've put it, and that is all about making sure that we understand the risk picture that sits around a perpetrator, and then making sure that a future victim doesn't become a future victim by sharing it either at their request, family request, or something that we do proactively. And we just didn't do very much of that historically, and the inspectorate picked up on it, rightly so. So that was the first area we put it, and I was warned about the impact that would have, because we go from having maybe kind of mid 100s disclosures through to 600 or 700 because of the way the technology works. But that's absolutely right. We made a decision to say let's not hide from the tech, because what it's doing is highlighting potentially vulnerable people. We've had cases where a victim would never have known that she was at risk had it not been for the Palantir system that's linked a traffic ticket with something else and put that perpetrator right next to her, and we're able to proactively say you were at risk based on what happened when he did this with this person, based on a traffic ticket and what happened. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and that's exactly where we should be. In terms of kind of pre-Nectar, July to December 24, post-Nectar, kind of the period I've just described. So we had 668 total requests for July. So it's the July to December period, 24 versus 25. 668 total requests. And then when you look at where we've got Nectar, we had 2,253 requests. Then we've got, in terms of right to know, so this is the really important one, which is where we have seen it, and you have right to ask, and then you have right to know, which is where we're seeing something we think we need to proactively tell you something. So this is someone that doesn't realise that they're at risk. So in the first period, July to December 24, we had 259 right to knows. And then in the post-Nectar period, if we call it that, we had 1,603. That huge rise. In terms of the so what bit, because it's not always turning out to be a disclosure because risk-based decisions are made, we went from having 117 disclosures in that period to 255. So kind of do the quick maths as well, 140 odd extra people we've been able to safeguard as a direct result of that system. So hopefully that's some reassurance around the benefits to the public of that investment. We're also looking now, as of yesterday, I got an update. We're using it in, for example, intelligence application, intelligence packs that get to put together. So, for argument's sake, a firearms operation will traditionally go to an analyst. They will put a whole load of stuff together so we can do a safe operation around them. That can take sometimes an entire day. This is something now this tech can do in the space of kind of 25, 30 minutes. So we will be really careful about how we use it. AI has its flaws, but what we're seeing so far, and for your kind of further reassurance, ACC Nick Caveney gave an update our executive board yesterday just on the kind of the close scrutiny and governance that he has. He has like a monthly board to go through the level of detail just to make sure that we're still on track. Kind of using this sensibly. But what we're seeing so far is exactly what we would have hoped to have seen. And then the test now is really probably for our imaginations in terms of where we can kind of responsibly use AI next.
No, thank you for that update. And we've touched on some of those Clare's Law areas of progress in these meetings before, and it's really significant, I think, that step change that's been delivered, because it goes directly to protecting vulnerable people, and some of that proactive work that you've described, critically important. So really positive use. Where do you see that extending? I mean, you said it's kind of up to the imagination a little bit, but in terms of what would be your next areas of priority in terms of that technology being used after things like Clare's Law and some of that analysis work you've described?
So one of the conversations we're having at the moment is about our resource management, and one of the ways that we think we might be able to use it next. And I'm kind of conscious I don't want to make announcements here before we've kind of had a chance to test it properly. One of the things we're thinking we might be able to use it is in that kind of making sure we've got the right people in the right places, the right annual leave is granted, all those bits that probably the public don't always appreciate. That with a machine of over 4,000 individual parts, if you like, talking about the people. That's quite an ask, and it takes quite a lot of people to make sure that's done correctly. But it is quite algorithmic, so we're just working on whether or not that's feasible. And there'll be lots of other areas we can use it. The control room is another example. We are really ambitious, as you know, really ambitious as a constabulary. We want to use it progressively. We just want to do it responsibly as well. But that's probably, to answer your question, the next place beyond the Intel teams that's just started. Then it's probably in how we use it for resources. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's useful. You touched a little bit around the sort of management of the risks and ethical concerns, and there will be concerns by some members of the public around the use of this kind of technology, and indeed perhaps even the involvement of sort of big global technology companies in policing. And some of that's a kind of national question, not for individual police forces. But how are you managing those risks and ethical concerns to satisfy yourself operationally that they are not posing a risk, and that those kind of protections and controls are effective? So
we did actually have, when we were having conversations last year, we did have a good conversation about the ethics and of it, and then with the chosen provider, we just wanted to tread really carefully. So we did consider that. One of the things, and I laugh when I see the phrase "human in the loop" because it's used more and more. But when I joined the police 28 years ago, I didn't think it was a phrase I would ever use. But we always have a human in the loop to make sure that we're not allowing the tech kind of to run away with itself. We're really conscious, this is not a negative statement against AI generally, but it does hallucinate. We're really conscious of that. I would also describe it as a people pleaser. So we're kind of really alive to some of the risks around it. But we have, so whether it's a case officer who confirms the correct person on the police records and removes the false positives, or we have someone that's specifically trained to make decisions around Clare's Law, for example, is still looking around necessity, proportionality, because we're accountable. In safeguarding, we've got disclosure officers still validate the kind of safety plans, etc., etc. So there's, and then we've ultimately we've got the accountability boards chaired by one of our directors, Nick, and we've also got an ethics group that will consider different things as they come up regards this, ready to help. Can't give you an example of where it's been used for this right now, but it's brand new for us. But it's kind of there ready to talk through some of those ethical questions. But at the moment, it's probably just those bullet points really just to reinforce the human in the loop kind of bit. And we will tread really carefully with it, and we appreciate that people are kind of mindful of its artificial intelligence. But yeah, we'll be responsible with it.
Thank you. And you touched a little bit there around the next question I wanted to ask around that sort of risk of AI hallucinations. Obviously, there was quite a lot in the news a month or two ago around a case in West Midlands Police acting on what turned out to be incorrect intelligence produced by AI relating to how they assessed risk around crowds of football matches. Can you just talk me through a bit more the safeguards you've got in place to ensure as far as possible that something like that couldn't happen in Hertfordshire?
Yeah, of course. So we, in terms of this safety advisory group kind of attendance, that bit first, we were kind of closely watching what was unfolding, and I personally had, I know other conversations took place with some of our key members of staff that would attend those, so public order, public safety commanders. There's been a piece of work that's kind of pulled out some of the lessons, but really and truly it comes down to fundamentally understanding exactly what the truth is in amongst it all, you know, on the basis of AI can be a people pleaser. And we're already in that position where we have someone that is actually, you know, looking through, and I've actually got something going on in the background now to do with Germany and actually speaking to the German embassy just to make sure what's coming up on AI is actually exactly how it played out. So yeah, that is there. There's an event that's coming up in Watford, football event coming up in Watford soon, and there's some recommendations that came out from National Chiefs Council about how to kind of the immediate kind of hot learning, if you like, from what unfolded to do with West Mids, and we've exactly adopted that straight away, which actually sees me being inserted above the gold commander just to reassure ourselves. Traditionally, there's only really been a gold, silver, bronze. It's crept in different ways with something informally above that, but there now is something formally above that. So we're absolutely in line with that. And I've already talked a little bit about the kind of the implementation group that we have for AI, just making sure that we don't fall foul of anything. I think it could easily happen, but we're just watching like a hawk, basically.
So, thank you very much for that, and I think that point you made around the human involvement is critically important there, isn't it? And do you feel the right governance in place where if you ended up identifying concerns, you can row back from some of that AI work if you needed to? Because I mean, that when we talk about live facial recognition earlier, one of the things that I think gave reassurance in some of those public engagements, the superintendent said, if I don't like what I'm seeing from the technology, I'll just stop it. Yeah. Is that have you got that right governance in place with AI if you needed to?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have. So not only through the workforce directly to decision makers, we then, I mean, on a really tactical level, we could send a text to our contact to the company and say we need to just stop. And we've had those conversations. We haven't had to do it, but if we needed to, we would then consider how we then keep people safe, etc. But it will be about dealing with the issue at the time. But the answer to your question is we absolutely have that in place. No, there is no, you know, kind of a business phrase, but that psychological safety exists for someone to say, I'm worried about this, we need to stop straight away. That could happen very, very quickly. And no one is so wedded to this that would be in any way an issue. The thing we want to do is to keep the public safe, keep our officers in the right place and staff. So yeah, the answer is yes, we have.
Okay. Thank you. That's reassuring to hear. That draws us to the end of the agenda for this month's Accountability and Performance meeting. Deputy Chief Constable, thank you very much for joining it. Hope you found it to be okay. And thank you to members of the public watching. And we'll have the next meeting in mid-April where the Chief will be back with us.
Thank you.